Man, I already got ticks crawling on me. That time of year, I guess. Welcome everyone to Something in the Wild. I'm your host, Tyler Smith. If you can't tell, and for those of you on YouTube, I'm sure you could definitely tell, I am out here in the beautiful, beautiful woods of western Pennsylvania here. I was planning on coming out, doing a little bit of shed hunting today, and just kind of take a little walk through the woods. I mean, everything's greening up. I don't know if you could really tell from the camera angle, but there's green on the ground. Some of the bushes are budding. This is freaking awesome. I'm so excited to be out here. I'm so excited to be talking to you guys, and this is my first episode from outside. So we'll see how this goes. I'm not sure how the audio is going to be. There's a little bit of wind. We just had like a crazy snow squall that came through. It's like whiteout conditions on my drive in here, which was pretty crazy considering it was like 70 degrees 2 days ago. But we're going to get right into it here. I got a couple talking points for us today, and I'm going to start off by talking about our garden, Sammy and I's garden that we're working on right now. Just kind of a little update on where we're at. We planted some basil, planted some thyme, some oregano, some parsley, and right now the thyme is doing very, very well. So is the basil, but the other stuff's taking a little bit longer to germinate, and that's to be expected. I mean, we planted a couple weeks ago, so online it's saying 7 to 14 days for germination. We're getting around that 14-day mark, so we'll see if they start popping up here sometime soon. This month specifically, March into April is whenever a lot of people are going to be starting their seeds inside, like tomato seeds and those kind of summertime plants that that are very, very much conducive to gardening. So we're really excited to start doing that, and probably it's the 10th right now, so probably in like 10-15 days we'll start planting, and it'll be cool. I'm excited to get all that stuff planted, because that's really where all of our food's going to be coming from, is those tomatoes, the zucchini, stuff like that. So excited for that. Next, that is kind of just a brief talking point about what's going on in my life right now. But next, I wanted to talk about living sustainably, and I guess that kind of plays off of the gardening aspect side of things. There's a huge push right now for people to start living sustainable, more sustainably than we have in the past. And I kind of have been doing some internal thinking about why that is. Why is it so important now for people to be connecting with nature, connecting with the food that they eat, living sustainable lifestyles? And I think it all really boils down to the, I guess, realization of humanity that what we're doing right now cannot persist much longer. The things that what I'm talking about specifically is the pollution, littering, plastic production, things like that. It's very prevalent now more than ever that that type of lifestyle is not going to be able to persist much longer if we want to protect the land that we live on, protect our water, and things like that. It's very obvious to me because I spend a lot of time outside, but those of you that might not be walking around in the woods, spending a whole lot of time outside, you can't go more than 200 feet on any piece of public ground and not find a piece of trash. An old water bottle, a can, glass bottle, whatever. Balloon, for example. Those piss me off a lot whenever I find balloons, just because, get let up into the air, and you think, oh, well, out of sight, out of mind. No, it comes down eventually, believe it or not, and it usually finds its way onto farms, onto big tracts of forest, and then it causes a whole bunch of issues for animals and stuff like that. So I think I kind of got off on a tangent there, but I think living sustainably, it's super, super important nowadays, just because of the booming population. Humans are our population is expanding, especially in the United States. And if we don't all do our part to mitigate those negative impacts that we're going to have, we're not going to, we're going to be struggling mightily with pollution and things like that. I mean, we already went through a phase like that, back in the industrial age. I think we're now just starting to recover from that. And from being from Pittsburgh, I know it better than most that if you don't consider the fact that what you're doing has negative impacts, negative consequences, one-time consumable items, stuff like that. Just take a look back in, whenever the steel industry was thriving, just dumping tons of waste into the rivers, and it really caused a lot of issues, and you can still see the impact that has had in the rivers today. So just all being conscious about that, and thinking about the potential impact if everyone does do their part. Where is that going to get us as a society? And it's a great question, and I can only merely speculate on what that might look like in the future. But I think as Americans, it's our responsibility, because we do have all of this land, all of this public land, and all of these natural resources. We don't have 1,000-year-old buildings. We don't have we don't have magnificent architecture like they do in, Italy, or, magnificent art, stuff like that. We have nature. We have natural systems that are our viable resource, or, valuable resource, I guess. And that's part of our American identity, is to protect that and to engage with that nature, engaging with nature, engaging with wild places. That's where we came from as a country. We've always had public land, or not public land necessarily, but we've always had land that was, destined to be explored. And we still do. It's dwindling for sure. But if we can protect those resources, protect that land, then it'll last for generations, which is important to me personally, because I have a very personal interest at stake. Just because I do love spending so much time outside, and I do enjoy engaging with animals and wild places. So I have a very personal connection to that, but I hope that those that are listening can understand that you do as well. Whether you know it or not, it is part of your identity as an American, to protect and defend those wild places. That's why we're the first country in the world to establish a national park system. First country in the world to establish federally designated national parks, federal wilderness areas, national forests, things like that. So remember that and keep it in mind. Keep it in mind at all times. I know Sammy and I are trying to trying to reduce the waste that we produce, reusing stuff, trying not to buy meat from the store, whenever we can, obviously. We were blessed with that giant elk, so that really helped us out a lot, and a couple deer, to sustain us for the time being. But really trying to reduce our impact on the world, and it also comes down to policy and politics and things like that, where I think nationally we need to also be pushing for federal protections. And a lot of people might scoff at the thought of, I don't want the federal government putting their hands in my business. And that is a great point. And I agree to a certain extent. I'm all for a conservative type government, but I think there needs to be an understanding that the government is there to serve the people, people of America. And that might be a very controversial topic. And I don't mean to bring up politics into this, but I am going to here for a second because, I think it's a good time, right? This is a election year, 2024. So, I think it's important because, stuff like this, stuff like the woods is hanging in the balance, depending on who those candidates are, who the president is, their political view, things like that. And it's kind of unfortunate because it is such a sensitive subject for a lot of people. It's so polarizing. The presidential race, presidential candidates, you're either for one or you're for the other, and there is no compromise. Not with either party. It is, one party thinks that we need to do something this way, and the other party is the exact opposite. Why is it like that? I couldn't tell you. I know it's very systematic. It's just kind of human nature, especially whenever you're competing against someone else. Competition always brings out the fact that, there's people that are going to root for one team. There's people that are going to root for the other team. So how could we possibly prevent that sort of thing from happening and instead collaborate with one another to find good, practical solutions for problems? And this doesn't just, I'm not talking about like all the other political stuff that, all that stuff that, is very important. I'm talking more about the protection of, wild land, stuff like that. And the reason for that being obviously because this is a wilderness podcast. I'm talking about stuff in nature. That's my passion. That's what I'm very passionate about. So that's what I like talking about. We can get into other stuff, but I really don't want to, because that'll just cause even more tension, if you will. So I'm just specifically going to be talking about the protection of wildlands and how the government plays into that and how they can help impact us as outdoorsmen here. So how does that kind of tie in with what I want to talk about here? So I think whenever people think of a hunter, think of someone that hunts animals, they think of, far right wing, conservative, and all that stuff. But a lot of the time, left, people that are leaning more left wing are more for nature. So, and that's what I'm trying to say here about the whole polarization type thing. I think that people get too caught up in one side or the other, and they don't realize that we, as a collective, are all fighting for the same thing. We're fighting for natural areas, natural land, wild animals to be thriving in certain areas, as well as having access to those areas. I guarantee you that I have more in common with someone that lives in California that loves to go outside, hike, spend time in the woods, rock climb, surf, whatever. I guarantee you I have more in common with someone like that than someone who is just like some sort of right wing, crazy person, right? I'm not saying that we should be looking at it as one side or the other. I'm just saying that I think us as Americans, we have more in common with one another than a lot of people would think. At least a lot of people's perception at the moment. And that middle ground is, I think, the sweet spot for politics and for political opinions. I think as long as we can hear one another out and, share our opinions, have an open conversation about these problems, it would make the world so much better. First of all, so much better. But that is obviously tough for a lot of people to understand, and I just hope that we can work to figure that out as a collective, as a nation, really. All right, now let's quit talking about the serious stuff, and I want to go into something that I've been really, really into as of late. Just because there's not a whole lot to do outside. I mean, there's shed hunting, but not a whole lot of fishing opportunity. Turkey season's far away, deer season's gone. So it's time that I focus my energy elsewhere. And right now, I'm focusing my energy on looking at land, large tracts of land specifically, and I want to talk a little bit about why I think it makes sense to be buying land, looking at land right now, because first and foremost, there's only a limited amount of land available in the United States. I mean, the population right now is booming, like I mentioned. The housing market, it is so it's the competition is so great for buying houses, buying land, stuff like that, because there's so many people that want to live here. And it's not a bad thing necessarily, but you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, protecting your family. At least from my point of view, I enjoy and I love spending time outside, and I want to establish myself in a specific area for a long time. I want to be able to plant my roots real deep in one area, and I want to be able to eventually, at some point, pass that on to my children. And I think there's no better way for me to do that than by purchasing land in an area that I like, maintaining that land as a natural ecosystem, promoting the growth of native species, native animals, and eliminating, just creating a great habitat for not only just stuff that I enjoy hunting, like deer and turkey and bear and stuff like that, but I'm talking about, creating an area that will protect habitat for birds, protect habitat for amphibians, protect habitat for pollinators, bees, things like that. And I think it all goes hand in hand. You want your space, you want our space to have as much biodiversity as possible, be as healthy of a landscape as possible. And the only way for you to really make a serious impact in doing so is by buying a chunk of land. It doesn't have to be 2,000 acres. It can be 5 acres, 2 acres, 1 acre. But if you're taking care of that land, like we were talking about earlier, if everyone does their part, this place would be freaking amazing. It'd be beautiful. Everything would thrive. So no matter how big or small your chunk of land is, make sure you're taking care of it. And even if it's not, you don't technically own it. These public lands, man, they are yours. You do own this land, right? I'm sitting right here on a piece of public land, and this is my land as well as it is yours. So if we understand that a little bit more, I think that we'll come to appreciate places like this much more than if we didn't understand that. And I think it's being lost a little bit right now, to be honest. I think it's being lost, the fact that public land is your land to enjoy. So go out there, enjoy it, have fun. That's why it's been designated. That's why people before, our ancestors, people before us, have dedicated so much of their lives to protecting areas like this. It's so you can go out and enjoy it. So, if people are going out and enjoy public lands more, I think get a greater appreciation, like I said, and you grow to understand the ecosystem a little bit more and your impacts that you have on those lands. Whether that be dumping something that in the water or whatever, something nasty, or littering, you understand that impact greater, and you have a better appreciation for living a more sustainable life. And I think that kind of put a wrap that up and put a nice little bow on this whole conversation. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from here. I'm not trying to be polarized. I'm not trying to talk about sensitive subjects. I'm just trying to educate and defend our public resources, which I think everyone should be. So I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to be doing a lot more of this stuff outside because the weather is getting nicer. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much, and make sure to keep it wild.